Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be covering ER Studio Team Servers integration with Collibra. We have Ram Pratti and Jamie Knowles. Ram Pratti is the principal strategist at Collibra, and Jamie is the product manager for ER Studio at Idera. They've been the team leads on this integration project, so they're the experts who can cover all your questions that you have. And the next slide walks through our agenda here today. So I will just pass it over to our presenters to get it started.
Yeah, so we want to give a high-level overview of the governance and how the pieces comes together, and then go into the more technical pieces of cataloging, and then how ER Studio and Collibra working together, what is the combined solution looks like. So in a bigger picture, what is the whole mission of the governance, right? So we call them operating model in Collibra. This is basically, if you think of it as a people, process, technology, right? These are the three components of governance that you've been hearing from decades. So it's assigning those right people to those right responsibilities and giving them the access to the right data in the right way, using the right way at the right time. That's basically the core mission of our data governance. And what it requires, right, it meets basically a consistent way of doing these things. And that's where having a tool and technology helping you to make that consistency and visibility is important. And understanding where this data is coming from, how it's structured, where it is moving, and how it's transformed, and what kind of quality profiles it has is also another kind of it, right? Then it comes to the usage of it. Can I trust it to use the purpose I'm looking for? Is my role, is I have the access to the right data for my role, what I'm doing? And it goes on. So that's the whole idea of moving things in a bigger picture. More the next year. So what do we have? So what is basically the components of data governance here, right? So if you take the core is your managing your knowledge using your governance, data governance, then you have your roles and responsibilities as stewards and users on the one side, and technologies, how you are managing your systems, how they're building them together, and also managing the change management, right? It's a new culture. It's bringing you a new way of doing things that your change management comes. And using all these things, you can use the same framework, same methodology into multiple use cases. It may be a compliance for your things, or it may be a bad models you have, and you want to clean up those models. That can be a piece, right? And you want to know where the data is going. You want to know that you are moving from a old school virtual machine world into a new modern cloud migrations. And it's all fits into those different use cases based on how you use it and how you slice the content that you have. The next step. So then if you see the evolution of the whole journey, now you probably see into the governance. That's where slotted in the slide where then moved into Collibra as the de facto tool. Then we came from the top-down approaches into a defensive approach into more offensive approach, where we have the data scientists, analysts coming and, hey, I need governance in an operational way. I want to use this governance on top of my operational content. How do I do that? So I want to find everything that you have in your organization for my purposes, so I can pick the right thing for my use. So now you have these people using for this, finding the data where I find it, and now your governance looking to create the policies and trust and policing around this data to bridge this gap and to also connect both the worlds from conceptual into the more real world operational side is what the catalog makes it, right? So bringing all those, connecting the hard lines of hard data pipelines into your soft conceptual things or logical things using the governance is what makes both the end user understand what you have, and governance also understand how do you govern the actual operational assets, physical assets that you have in your world. The next step. So it's a simple how to, right? It's not the end guide. There are multiple variations of it, but I want a simple flavor of how to get started, right? The core thing is to defining roles and responsibilities, as we mentioned, and also looking into are we going to govern as a centralized or a federated, decentralized, what approaches you want to do it, or you want to manage this LOB level, how do you want to manage it, right? So bringing those concepts of operating model is important in the earlier stages. Then coming to the business dimensions, and that's where ER Studio plays a very important role here. Identifying is your lines of business is a dimension, and process are dimensions, and subject areas, right? So mastering your subject areas, it does not matter it's an LOB model or it's not enterprise conceptual model, enterprise model, but identifying those models and actually building, connecting those logical or physical world into your conceptual abstract taxonomies, ontologies, however you manage it, however you deep you want to go, connecting those both words and also slicing them. Hey, this terminology we are using, this ontology we are using only for specific LOB we are talking about. Maybe that changes from a different LOB, right? It's completely different as well. You may call same customer, logically you represent customer name, customer identifier, same thing, but conceptually they may be completely different. One is for servicing, maybe one is for prospecting, right? There's two different worlds. Bringing those into the same world and identifying those variations is where our next steps comes into picture. Right? So then after that, it's more building on top of it. It's how do I get where this data coming from? Is it a primary? Is it important data for our things? Do I need to put security controls on it? Do I need to put quality controls on it? Or do I have any valid values on it? So do I need to control these valid values? So you start putting a lot of policies and controls on top of it is your next chain, right? And also knowing how is the end-to-end, all the hops involved in it, how it's moving from hop to hop, and is the quality changing? Is the definition changing? Is the life cycle of the subject is changing from area to area? All those comes under that step. The next is to actually, okay, now I defined all this. How do I measure it? Do I go to harvest in a physical database, or do I harvest this from ER Studio, or do I harvest manually in a spreadsheet? So identifying those things, and if you identify these things, how that is actually progressing, how much progress you made in the last 30 days to last 90 months, and how much value you are getting of what you are doing, generating those metrics and putting those thresholds will be your next step. And not at the bottom of it, right? So you harvest a lot of contents, you put a lot of models, you put part of dictionaries. You want to provide, this is an authoritative data source for this context, for this purpose. So that is a context. Providing that context is very, very valuable, right? Connecting your glossaries and into your logicals, and your logical to your physicals. In our world, we call guided stewardship, but you'll learn more about that later. But in the particular context, giving that context to your logical, physical, and all things, and connecting all those dots together, and is what is the next step is. And not the first and the final, right? We have seen, if you see the decade back, where we start everything with policies. You put your enterprise policies, you document policies, you document the organization structures, then you start doing actually governance. But we kind of flipped over in the recent decade of our learnings. We want to learn our policies and evolve all the policies as we start our iterative process. You are starting a small chunk, and then you evolve that and use those experiments basically to build your policies and standards. Jamie?
Okay, right. So at the center of this is the data catalog. This is the framework of what do we want to govern. And the business glossary is a fundamental part of that data catalog. So the first question in governing is what information do I want to govern? So we can build a list of business terms in various different glossaries. We can define data stewards, standards, policies, rules against all of these terms. On the diagram here, we can see that the terms is not just a simple flat list. What we really want is a nice ontology of those business terms to see relationships between them. So in the sort of journey for data democratization, we want users to be able to come in, business users to be able to come into the business glossary, find a term, oh, I'm looking for information about companies. What type of companies are you looking for, and can drill down through taxonomies and then explore the model. So that's the first part of our data catalog. The next part is to build out the data dictionary. Well, where is this information? So we've got a whole bunch of data assets around the organization. So data might live in documents and databases and files. Each of those has got some sort of technical structure or schema. so we can understand those schemas. Here we've got a little picture of a database, so we've got tables with columns and relationships between those tables. So the second part of the mission to build our catalog is to run through, identify all the data assets, bring in and get a picture of the schema of them. And then the third part is to connect the two together. So we can go through each table and each column. So over on the right there, you can see you've got a table called cust. What is cust? Okay, so using our accepted universal language, we can find a business term in our business glossary called customer. Great, cust equals customer, and C_RTNG is credit rating score. So we can map the two together. If we go through all of our data assets and do this sort of process, then we've got sort of two journeys that we can make through the model. We can come from the left-hand side and say, well, show me all the data assets that contains customer information. And I can go from right to left and say, okay, this particular field in this database, what does it mean? What rules applies to it? Who's the subject matter expert or the data steward for it? So that's the core of our data catalog. So the mission is building out that data catalog, and what we're talking about here with Collibra and ER Studio working together is really sort of taking advantage of the knowledge that our data architects have got. So data architects live in generally the IT organization, and for many years these roles have been building out models of our data assets and the information of the organization, doing a similar sort of job that we talked about. We use a slightly different approach. So on the right hand side of the screen with our data dictionary, we'll create physical data models using the sort of notation that you can see on the screen. Over on the left hand side, we'll then create logical data models. So semantically, we're doing a similar sort of job to the newer data governance mission, but we're using structured approaches with our logical and physical data models. So we're creating, so that the job of the data architects is to design those data assets. So these sort of models, again, same sort of information, but it's for the purpose of designing those data assets. So a traditional journey would be, I'll create a logical data model, having conversations with my stakeholders and those that have commissioned the data assets. We'll go through, create the logical model, agree the logical model. It's all in business language so we can understand it. I've got things like super sub relationships in here, so I can show that there are different types of company relationships between the different entities. And then I can use that to generate physical data models. So that's the sort of the life of the data architect. So we've got some really good knowledge here. So a lot of our customers using ER Studio doing this sort of thing. They've been using the tool for 10, 20 years and have got some excellent enterprise scale models. And from that, we can start to harvest business terms and business glossary. Not only can we harvest business terms, but we can pull in ontological relationships between them. So, and you're going to see this in the tool in the demonstration later on. So we've really got a model now with three parts to it. We've got our business glossary for the purposes of governing our data used by the data stewards. We've got our logical data models down the bottom used by our data architects for the purpose of documenting and designing data assets. And then we've got physical models over on the right that actually represents the technical schema of those data assets. And if we join them all together, then we get a very powerful model, and we can use it in lots of different ways. So connecting our business glossary to our logical data models, we can ensure that our data architects' understanding of data is the same as our data stewards. We can potentially generate the entire business glossary from really good logical data models. The business has already got something that they understand and accept, so we can use that as a first cut business glossary. So a lot of knowledge in the heads of our data architects that we can use. Just a quick one here. This model really sort of shows an enterprise view of those data models, and this sort of comes into play later on. So over on the right, those logical and physical models. So at the bottom, for each of my data assets, I might create a projects model with a logical component and a physical. And I've got lots and lots of these. Right in the center of the organization, I might have a single enterprise logical model. So I've got a common understanding of the information across the organization, and a higher level of abstraction above that is the conceptual model. So I might have 50, 100, maybe 200 core concepts, the most important sort of concepts of the organization, the master entities, master data elements of the organization. And with a good enterprise model, it can join the 3 layers together. So I can sort of drill down from company and say, there's various different entities in my more detailed logical model that represents company. And then I can see, client here. Well, here it is in various different project models. So again, all this knowledge is useful in our data governance projects, and connecting it to our business glossary gives us that complete model. Right, Ram, over to you again. Tell us about Collibra.
Yep, so let's do a simple poll before I switch on to my role. We'll have a simple poll coming up for you guys, and please try to answer.
Justine, are you going to do the poll?
Yes, it should be launched right there for y'all. Does your organization's data strategy support your daily operations?
Give a couple of minutes. Let's see how it progress. They're still coming, so.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you guys for all your response. It looks like we got 55% saying it's coming along, which is good. Only 6% are absolutely supporting it. That means as we see the market trend, I think we are pretty much in the same direction as anyone else in the industry. It's good. So now we talked about conceptually, when we talked about little architecturally, so I want to give a little bit overview on the product from the product point of view. So we're going to give switching our gears here. On to the next Jenny. So what's our product consist of? So now we are calling as a platform. So in the original days, it's built for only governance as a product. But however, in the years in the journey we went to, we actually build this as a platform. What that mean is you can build your own applications yourself, and as well as we are building multiple applications on top of it. If you think of on the data catalog, data lineage, data quality, there are different capabilities or different applications that are built on same governance platform. What does the platform consist of? Your managing your workflows, managing your stewardship process, assignments, roles and responsibilities, and managing your all your operating model, or what kind of assets you want to govern, how you want to enforce these policies. All those core capabilities comes under platform. And then in the recent years, as we started with GDPR, then CCPA, that privacy become our core capability as part of our platform. Now we want to become a system designed by the privacy policies, right? So policy by design approach, that's what we are taking. So you have the classification of the data, you have your PIs, PCIs, entitlement, government stewardships, multiple capabilities that comes under privacy and the security enforcement, right? Access controls, all those capabilities comes under the platform as well. So using that, as I mentioned, using those platform capabilities, now you are building multiple applications, and using these applications, we want to solve business challenges and business use cases. Data discovery is one use case, right? And collaborating or data democratization is another spectrum of it. So providing those use cases at the same time coming and starting to help the business, solving the business problems. You want to provide a self-service BI, or you want to do advanced analytics, how we can help as the capabilities to supporting all these internal capabilities. And you can see at the bottom of it, we do also with our evolve of our catalog as a capability. Now we can able to connect to multiple sources directly, right? So using your JDBC drivers or APIs, there are multiple mechanisms, but there are many ways to connect to your traditional databases, to traditional data warehouse, to modern data lakes, and all the API-driven apps, cards apps, as well as if you don't have any of those things, just use a spreadsheet import and export. So next, Jamie. So that's the overall high-level product architecture, right? So if you see the capabilities of on the governance side, you can see all the if you see a physical data dictionary, in the physical data dictionary you have schemas, tables, and columns. You can see the complete hierarchy of what's your schema look like, what are the contents of it, and what's your table and what is the contents of it. And you can see all those details in a very user-friendly navigational function. And all the collaboration, stewardship, as mentioned, is all built into that component. The next, Jim. So as we mentioned before, the catalog is the core of where we are heading and where we are doing. So if you think of last couple of decades, governance has become a warhead for most of the organizations, and it's very resource intensive to come from a top-down approach of defining these glossaries and terms, and then going to the CDEs, then all these details, right? So now with the catalog, invention of catalog, with the all these capabilities, you can start from the bottom up. So actually creating all those physical assets, then bringing all those details into the Collibra platform, then identifying what's your priority, what's most used, how can we utilize this and build those glossaries on top of it, right? And there is a middle ground as well. That's where the Studio plays a big role, where a logical components of it, building those logical structures. Hey, don't worry about too much conceptually, don't stuck in concepts, and also don't go harvest thousands of applications you have. Let's start building your logical of how your organization data is look. So that's where you start your Studio world, and you can bring those data dictionaries into our world, as well as you can do the same conversion of your logical models into physicals in the Studio itself. However, you think of it, those are the design time approaches, whereas what we have in the catalog is the runtime things. So we do have capabilities that are coming up, we call in our future roadmaps as well. How do we bring those futuristic or design time into a runtime and identify those gaps and notify those things as you go? And as well as in the catalog, we not only notification of the physical data changes. Someone changed a column data type from 1 to 12. The user, the steward, is going to be notified. And the same thing with the Studio integration, we can do it proactively before even the change pushed into the physical structure. We can do it the logical structure when the proposal state itself. So you are getting a lot of value here. That's where the 70% of you see the core value is in the catalog. That's how we see it in these days. Jump on to next view. So this is where the other component of lineage, right? So now, hey, I have my taxonomies, my ontologies. I know how my business looks like, what they speak, and now you connected those business terminologies into how your physical data is structured and how it's harvested. Now this is where you're connecting these dots of, hey, this is the same concept that we talked is actually coming from system A to system B to system C. In between, this is what the transformations are happening. Hey, and not only that, this is what it's called in our enterprise logical data dictionary, and this is what is called in our LOB subject area model. So you can see all those views in one single visual. So that's what our lineage capability provides. Right? So there is a we divide the lineage into business lineage, data lineage, and technical lineage. So the different views of the same content for the different users and different personas to consume. Okay. So yeah, one more. Yeah. So now we talked about pure Collibra in this case, but now how we as two products and focusing on two different personas, focusing on two different approaches are going to help the organizations. So what we are going to do is a easy to find a portal, a search portal where the users can come. It does not matter, it's in a physically stored in a physical database, or is it logically modeled in a logical database, or is it gone taxonomy, whether it's in harvested from the logical to conceptual from the Studio, or actually coming from the business itself in Collibra. So make those things all findable and easily available for the user to see where they are and how they are defined. And then for understanding those data, so running the profiles, the quality of it, what is those data types, or what is those length, what is the precision, what is the standard deviation, what is the minimum maximum values, giving all those detailed nitty-gritty details to understand what the data not only just means, how it is actually instantiated within the physical world. And now you have the picture of what you have and how it is structured. Now it's connecting those dots with your governance and adding how we can add a new data. Do you need to put some controls in place? I want to change the data. Do I need some policies around it? I want to secure my data. Do I need to put some kind of control to enforce these encryptions or access controls on top of it? And all of these things, then now the usage comes in. How do I use this information? How the other users are using it? Is it valuable for my organization? And getting those usages not only to meet the privacy and regulatory compliance, but also for internal consumption-based prioritization. Where do I want to put more my dollars to get quick value? That's where you get on the data usages, identifying those usages. That's where we provide those value. Okay, next to Jamie. Before we jump to Jamie, do you want to start the next poll? Maybe one more poll.
Yep, let's do a poll.
Mm-hmm.
The poll's just launched. The poll is launched here. What are your biggest concerns about creating a data catalog? Alrighty, and I'll go ahead and close this here since we have majority of results.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. Right. So this is actually, I was having a webinar the other day with AWS on the cloud migration, and we asked the very same question to most of the audience, right? Who are not many of them use catalogs, many of them use data models, but many of them don't. But you pose the same question, the exactly same answer, right? Resource constraint. Because this is very human intensive activity, as well as this is not no one's full-time job. It's always a part-time job or a job that's in addition to what you are doing day to day. And we, as the products, both sides of the worlds, we understand this concern. We really know how this is happening. So you'll see a lot of AI and ML coming up into, and that's where our product roadmaps are focusing on. How do we automate all these activities, reduce this resource intensive process into, right now it's kind of 80% you are putting from the resource point. We want to bring that to 60%. That's our early iterations, but going down to 30% is our primary goal in down the line 3 to 5 years. We'll talk a little more details about that in the coming slides. Go ahead, Jim.
Very good. It's quite a relief that nobody puts we don't need a data catalog. So that's good news. Cool. Right, so ER Studio. So as I said earlier, ER Studio is a tool for data architects to design and document data assets. And really the mission is to connect those data architects in with other initiatives around the organization that have involvement with data. So we want to be able to connect in with the data governance initiative, the data analytics initiative, and eventually we want all of our people and our tools to work together to give us a combined, unified data ecosystem. So wherever you go in that ecosystem, you're going to get the same answers on what is my data, what does it mean, where is it, the same basic questions. So ER Studio as a product, we've got 3 components to it. There's thick client data architects over on the left that our customers have been using. It's a product that's been around since the early 90s. So data modelers and data architects can use it to create conceptual, logical, physical data models, can convert between them, etc., generate code, reverse engineer databases. Okay. They can share all of those models in the central team server repository. And collaborate on them, check them in, check them out, version them, etc. And then we've got our web-based team server core, which publishes those models to a wider range of people. So we might have software engineers that are coding against a particular table or group of tables in a database, so they can find out information about those tables. They can subscribe to it. So if the data modelers, the data architects on the left change it, they get notified. And right in the center of it, we've also got our business glossary and our data catalog, a sort of simplified version of the Collibra glossary and catalog. So that's the products, and we've built from Team Server Core the integration with Collibra. Right, so the integration, here we go. We'll get onto a demo next, no more PowerPoints. So the integration itself, we've built it directly to the Collibra API. So it's the latest Collibra API. There is no coding required. We've done all the work. It's all flexible and usable, user configurable. So there's lots of different settings and parameters. We've found that many of our customers want to run the integration in a slightly different way. They've got a different approach. So we've tried to put in lots of parameters to give you flexibility on how the integration works. And there's really two parts to the integration. The first is the ability to synchronize the business glossaries. So in this diagram here, so if we look at the business glossary inside Collibra, we should get an identical view on selected glossaries inside Team Server. And you can choose which glossaries you synchronize. You might want some that only exist in Collibra, some that only exist in ER Studio. And those that are maps, they are kept fully in sync. As one changes, the other one updates. You can choose to say, if I create a business term in ER Studio, so maybe a data architect has discovered a piece of information that it doesn't exist in the Collibra catalog, in the Collibra business glossary, we can create it over here and it gets pushed over to Collibra, and then it goes through the Collibra workflow. So we really want to take advantage of those Collibra workflows. So the first part of it is synchronizing the business glossaries. And then the second part is those glossaries are then available to data architects to then map to data models. And then we want to be able to publish those mapped data models across to the Collibra catalog. So the Collibra acts as the catalog of catalogs, bringing in information from all sorts of different sources and reconciling that together to answer those important questions. What data is important and where is it? Right, I think it's time we actually looked at the demonstration. Okay, here we go. So this is ER Studio Team Server Core, and I'm just going to go through a couple of little journeys. The first one is really sort of exploring the data model. So remember earlier on, I had my sort of corporate conceptual model, my corporate logical model, and then all my project models. And you can see those models here. There's my corporate and logical, and then I've got a whole bunch of project models. So I can expand these and then drill down. I've got the diagram already open. Here's a conceptual model. So I might want to start a journey. Oh, I'm looking for information. I've got a small number of conceptual entities. I can drill down and say, well, tell me all about employee at the conceptual level. Great. Where does this now map to in terms of my corporate logical model? So we've got some nice graphical views here. So I can see that employee at my conceptual level maps to, I've also got an employee in my more detailed logical model. So I can then see this, ask lots of questions about it, see all the attributes of an employee, and I can drill down again and say, from my corporate logical model, then where does it map to in terms of all of my project models? So this is sort of taking me through all my project models here. So that's one particular view. Now, what I was saying earlier on is that these models are pretty well defined. So if I go back up to my corporate logical model, I can see that I've got various different submodels with nice diagrams. So if I'm going to look at the training model here, I can click on this fellow and I get a nice diagram. So for the purposes of designing and documenting data assets, I build these sorts of data models, a logical data model. And what we want to be able to do is to harvest from this. So all of these entities and the attributes and the relationships are well understood by the business. The language has been used many times to capture requirements from the business. So it's pretty well defined. So what we can do in here is, in the logical model, I've got a bunch of entities, and you'll notice we've got a little mechanism to harvest business terms. And if I click on that, I can select a target glossary, and then I can go through and choose which entities and attributes I want to become business terms. I can change the names of the terms. Maybe some of them aren't really relevant to my business glossary, so I can omit those, harvest any definitions, and then off we go. It'll harvest not only a bunch of business terms, but it'll harvest the relationships between them. And just to illustrate that in Team Server, so if we leave this screen here, go to my business glossary in Team Server, So I can go and find a business term called party. Great, there it is. See the definition of it. So maybe I'm looking for some information. So information about party. Ooh, I want to get a bit more specific. So what are the different subtypes of a party? So show me all of its full taxonomy. So a party could be an organization or a person. Person could be an employee or a visitor. Ooh, employee information. That's what I'm looking for. So I go through, yep, confirm this is the right definition. Now I want to know information related to an employee. So I can see my related tab and see, well, hey, I've got an employee performs a process, holds a contract. Okay, well, it's really information about the employee specifically. So I want to see attributes of an employee. So this view is, again, I'm browsing through the ontology of my business glossary. So employee can have an employee number, a type, and then I arrive at the information I'm looking for. So all of this model of business terms potentially could have been harvested from our logical data models. Now, you'll notice at the top of each business term, there's a little bit of text that says open in Collibra. So if I hop across the fence, I can see in Collibra, here it comes, exactly the same term, all the same properties that have been pulled from ER Studio, all of the same relationships. So my business term is grouped by, so we saw it's grouped by employee, so it's part of an employee, it's an attribute of an employee. So we've synchronized those business glossaries between the two sides of the fence. So absolutely identical. As we change one, it'll update the other. We can choose to make Collibra the master and ER Studio the slave, or vice versa. We can choose whether we can't create new things in one side or the other. We've got flexibility, but really want to try and keep the two models absolutely identical and take advantage of the features of the two tools. So the next part of the mission, once we've got our business glossaries, we then want to start to model our data assets and map the two sides together. So I think many of you have already seen version 19 of ER Studio and Data Architect. So here is the thick client tool. So I'm busy designing a data asset here. Okay, and I've got an entity open called employee, or I might do at the physical level and see a table called EMP. There's all my attributes. Now I've got a new tab in here. So there's business glossary. If I hit add term, what I can see now is a list of all of the business terms, and these could have been created in Collibra. So here's a list of all my Collibra terms and allocated into different glossaries. And I can select one of those terms, read the description, and attach it to my entity, my attribute, my table, or my column. Okay, and I can map the two together. So all we want to do, so that journey of connecting the sort of the understanding of the schema of the data assets to our business glossary. We could do it in Collibra. We can get our technical data stewards to do that, or we can employ the unique knowledge, that intimate knowledge of the data assets that our data architects have got. These are the people that have designed these data assets. So deciding whether what this information is in terms of our business terms is we want to bring it closer to them in the tool that they use all day long. So, okay, so now we go back to we go and find it. There's employee number in team server. So we've got our business term. We now can go to related ER objects. So as we've mapped through either in data architect or here in team server terms of data modeling assets, I can see it here in the model. So in my Northwind model here, I've got a logical model with an entity called employees and an attribute called employee ID. Okay, so that's slightly different language in this project to our central business glossary, but somebody has mapped that, so it tells us exactly what it is. If I open up this fella down the bottom, HR database, again, I've got a logical model, employee entity, employee number. I've then got a bunch of two physical models here. So I've got a Snowflake database with a table called EMP and a column called EMP NMB. It's been mapped back to employee number. So the first part of the demo was really sort of what information is important to me, and I arrived at employee number. And then the second part is where is that in terms of my data dictionary of data models representing individual data assets, or even sort of across to my corporate logical data model. Now, again, we can publish all this to Collibra. So we've got flexibility in there for the data architects to choose which of these models we want to publish to Collibra and when do they publish them. So if we hop across the fence again to Collibra, there's employee number. So I can now see that employee number represents various data assets, logical and physical. If I just sort of go across here, so inside Collibra, within this particular community, which I call demo, I've got various data dictionaries. I've got, or domains. I've got a domain of type glossary that's holding all my business terms that might have come from ER Studio, or we've mapped them to ER Studio. I've then got three domains of two different types. So two of type physical data dictionary and one of type logical data dictionary. I expand my logical data dictionary. Then these data models, okay, again, these have all come from ER Studio, the same submodels you'd see in ER Studio. If I expand training, then I can see my employee entity, and then I can see, where is it? Employee number. So that was mapped. If I click on employee number in my logical data model, then it's connected back to my business term. That mapping came from ER Studio. Employment number is part of the data entity, and then it's been mapped to some physical assets. Now, we go across here to diagram. So Ram was talking about guided stewardship. So some companies might not have a fully fleshed business glossary. They might want to start their governance projects around logical data models. Put a lot of their sort of governance classifications around the logical models. So this guided stewardship view here is putting our entity and our attribute in our logical data model, employee number, right in the center of the model, and then connecting us to various physical models. So here we've got two physical models, both the tables called EMP, and this one is part of my SQL Server database HR training. The table's called EMP, NMB. Again, all loaded from ER Studio, along with all of those mappings between them. Cool. Now that is the end of my demonstration. That's what I was going to show today. We're going to do questions in a moment. I thought we'd just do a quick section on future, where we're going next with this. So we've created our sort of first cut of the integration between the two tools. We've worked, so Ram and I have been working closely together on the integration. We've also been working with a lot of our larger customers that have been using the two tools and have been sort of building their own integrations between them. So we've got, we think, a really good first cut. Where we go next is really going to be sort of driven by you guys, our customers, the sort of things that we're looking at: bi-directional exchange of knowledge. So Collibra, hopefully the catalog of catalog, is going to be amassing knowledge about our information and data assets from lots of different places. So we might be bringing in data quality information and adding those to those physical data dictionaries that we're looking at. So some of that knowledge might be useful in our data models. So it might also be things like classification flags, PII flags, sensitivity flags. So we want to be able to bring that back into our physical models, so that when the data architect is making and considering changes to a data asset, then this knowledge can help guide their decisions. Something else we're looking at are more tools to be able to connect terms to our ER objects. So as Ram was saying earlier on as part of the poll, resources is a big constraint. We've got, most of our customers have lots and lots of data assets, lots and lots of information, lots of business terms. So connecting those two sides together, any tools that we can think of to sort of help with that process will be useful. So we're looking at sort of simple things like sort of fuzzy logic to sort of map names of things together, all the way up to AI machine learning. So if I've got a term called customer reference number, potentially we can map it to client identification code. The AI machine learning might identify that they are similar. The other thing that we're looking at the moment is data fabric. So I mentioned that our team of data architects, we need to connect them in with the data governance initiative. We also need to connect them with data analytics. So many of you out there are running data warehouses, data lakes, virtualization platforms. We've got some great tools for automating a lot of those things. So we've got some really exciting plans around connecting ER Studio with those to help with the sort of the journey of curating our data warehouses. Eventually, we want to get to the point where somebody can come to Collibra and say, I want some data. I want a data set being made available. So there's some sort of workflow that allows you to request data, and then our automations with tools like Qbowl and Warescape can then automate the delivery of those data sets. So we've got some really exciting plans. This isn't just the end of our sort of work with Collibra. We've got some exciting plans ahead of us. Right, and data fabric, just to sort of explain that. So over on the left, we've got our data sources with operational data stores and our applications. Over on the right, our data consumers, so BI tools, analytics tools. We can get them through the warehouse, the lake, or the virtualization layer. So Warescape for the warehouse, Qbowl for the lake. Our ultimate parent company also owns Denodo for data virtualization. So there's a lot of challenges with this. We might say that, okay, well, the data warehouse is great, but if we don't know what data we could put in it, then having automation is not going to help us much. So having a really good data catalog at the center of it, all the possible data sources that are available, all mapped to business glossary. So I can find that data really easily and then say, okay, I want this particular asset put into the warehouse, make it happen, or into the lake. As we put data into the warehouse or the lake, we want to be able to publish it back to the Collibra data catalog so people can find it. The next really exciting thing, I think, is being able to control security. So accelerating the journey of data from left to right with automations is great, but potentially opens up you up to risk. So if I'm taking the wrong data and putting it in the hands of the wrong people, I'm generating risk. So what we're looking at the moment is, well, in Collibra, we're defining parameters against business terms, security parameters. So what we can do is use those parameters. When we push it to Warescape to automate, then we can take those parameters and then use that to drive things like data masking profiles or security schema. So exciting stuff coming up. Right, questions?
Yes, I've been seeing a lot of questions come through, and both Ram and Jamie have been sending a lot of the responses already through to some of the folks, but I'm just gonna go through a couple that haven't yet been addressed. One of them that I saw come in was, why do I need Collibra if I have ER Studio?
Oh, that's a good one. So yeah, I mean, ER Studio, you can create a business glossary and a catalog of data assets and model them. But I mean, as Ram was saying, and Ram, you can sort of continue the answer. There's a lot more to governing your data than just a data catalog. Ram, you're on mute.
Oh. Sorry, I answered it on things, but the whole idea, right? So a glossary in ER Studio is a very specific purpose for architects, and defining it and publishing it. Right? We are bringing that into Collibra is connecting that terminology into whole different kinds of word. It can be a lineage, it can be a data quality, and giving an end user to experience to shop the physical data using a business taxonomy. Right, so that's another capability, and also data provisioning, data access controls. There are a lot more usages of the business taxonomy than just publishing in the ER Studio.
Yeah, I think there's some fundamental components missing from ER Studio to make it a data governance tool. So once you've defined business terms, controlling the change process of those business terms is really important. So ER Studio doesn't have a workflow tool. Collibra allow you to define those workflows on how do you change a business term and control them and make sure the right people make the right decisions. We don't have a flexible meta model, so having the ability to sort of flexibly model policies and rules and such like, Collibra is infinitely more configurable. But we do have some customers that are starting off the process. Yeah, we just want to create a very basic business glossary connected to some data models, and that's good enough. And ER Studio presents a really cheap option to do that. But then as their requirements grow, yeah, we want things like workflow, the extensibility, all the governance stuff that Ram was talking about, then great, then purchase Collibra, get it set up, and then you can push all your sort of basic models that you've created in ER Studio into Collibra, and really sort of kickstarts the Collibra journey.
I'm going to go on to the next question, Ram, unless you had another comment there.
Yeah, so no, I'm good. Go to the next one.
Okay. The next question is, what are your thoughts around incorporating ETL/ELT tools into the data fabric, as it's part of the data lineage and contains the actual transformations?
Yeah, I think that this is an exciting area and a really important area. So just to sort of going back of the slides, so just to frame that. So I think what you're saying here is, yeah, in our data fabric, we've got our data warehouse, we've got different regions in the data warehouse. The data is coming from operational data. These green lines, the movements of data throughout. So these green lines could be performed by ETL tools through stored procedures in the data warehouse, running ELT operations. We might have extraction rules in our BI tools to pull from the warehouse. So all these green lines here, I think it's really important to understand. And what we want to be able to do is to go to a sort of a field in a BI report and say, oh, I'm a bit concerned about the quality here. From whence did it come and what happened to it along the way? To sort of trace through this diagram. And I think this is, I mean, Collibra has got some great tools for doing this, and with some, Ram, you can talk more about sort of some of the partnerships that Collibra has. We're trying to do a little bit more on ER Studio with this, so we've already got tools to be able to reverse engineer an individual ETL and get the source target mappings. We're now trying to sort of understand how we resolve the source target mappings in an individual ETL with the rest of our data catalog, and again push it to Collibra to then be able to visualize. Ram,
yeah. So if you see the bottom picture, augmented data catalog, and you see a big green box, data lineage, right? So we are actually, that's where as a catalog we fill the gap, and we have all those harvesters for most of the standard ETL tools like Informatica's and the modern cloud, the AWS Glues and anything data movement stuff, and also we are working on modern data streaming technologies as well. So you'll be able to see all those hubs and the transformations with augmented catalog on top of, as part of the total fabric. You can go to the next one.
All right. Next question is on scalability. Can ER Studio catalog and the Collibra integration handle upwards of 2 million columns?
Well, yeah, this is it. So when we first started talking about this, and we had some good chats with some of our bigger customers, and scalability and performance has been baked in right from the start. It's a cracking question. I don't think we've sort of tested it with a model with one single model with 2 million columns yet. We've certainly tested some very, very large numbers. Maybe we can test it together.
Oh, great. Okay, next question here is on, can we connect to reporting applications like Tableau, Cognos, etc., to get the business metadata, which are defined there instead of in the databases?
Yes, you can. So we have in-house built connectors to most of the Tableau, Cognos, Power BI, and Looker, most of the BI tools, where you can harvest the complete end-to-end each, like reports, dashboards, report attributes, report elements, all the components, and then connect that back into the logical or physical. If you have a logical model on top of it, using our guided stewardship, we connect both logicals and also the physical data sources that comes out of the BI tools and the glossary terms as well. So all those comes as part of that.
Okay, on to the next question. Does the product roadmap include any integration with business architect and conceptual data models?
We do see conceptual coming pretty soon, but I think business architect, probably Jamie, you want to take that? I'd not see a lot of demand for that, at least on my side. I'm not sure your experience there, Jamie.
Yeah, let me talk about this one. So business architect is always a challenge on sort of how much we do with it. We are still investing in it not as much investment as we'd like. So how Business Architect connects in with the business glossary, how conceptual data models from Business Architects connect in with what we've been talking about, and then on to Collibra. We haven't yet really thought through. And again, if you've got good ideas on this, I'd love to talk to you. Drop us a line and we can discuss it in more detail. Conceptual data modeling in general is always a bit of a headache for us, because there's no sort of one standard way, and many of you do things in slightly different approaches. So we created the notion of business data objects in ER Studio a while ago to help with sort of conceptual level models. Some of you will create, like I had in the example, a separate logical data model holding your conceptual model that you can then drill down. So we're trying to provide sort of flexibility for that.
All right, next question is, does Collibra promote business rules for creating concept of golden record?
Yes, we do. So we do have an MDM integrations as well. So doing the matching rules, quality rules, survivorship rules, you can define all those things as part of it.
Next question is Google BigQuery on the ER Studio roadmap?
Oh, great. Yes, it is. Easy one. So we've just been building the parser support to be able to reverse engineer all the grammars, and then it goes into Data Architects. I think we'll be starting on it sort of early next year. So yeah, coming hopefully April time next year.
Great. Scrolling through to see what we've missed. Okay, this one's a little bit longer. So IT landscapes that includes vendor products with closed systems or SaaS products pose various challenges for metadata collection and completing the enterprise data picture. Do you have any recommendations for getting glossaries and other info from these vendors so you can fill in the blanks that these products and systems create? Yeah,
that's a great question. So we've got some good tools, and we share some of these tools with Collibra. So for instance, there's a product called Sapphire by a third party called Silwood. So with this product, you can point it to an SAP ECC environment, and if you were just to point ER Studio to that, you just get 80,000 tables with nasty sort of physical names and columns with cryptic physical names. But what this product does actually creates a logical data model based on the built-in data dictionary of SAP. It also connects to a wide range of tools that you can only access through the sort of REST API. So it will talk to Salesforce, for instance, and reverse engineer its underlying data model through the API. So with this tool, you'd create, first of all, a nice logical data model of all these products. You'd choose which parts of it you really sort of care about. SAP, 80,000 tables, you're probably not going to want all of it into your business glossary. So you'd sort of stage it through ER Studio, and then potentially once you've polished up the logical model, you can use those harvesting tools, harvest the business glossary, and then publish all of that to Collibra. And also Sapphire works directly with Collibra, so you could push it straight into Collibra as well.
Yeah, and also in Collibra, we have drivers for most of the general applications like Salesforce, Workday, anything you can think of, those SaaS applications that we have it. But as you see, right, those are for us more data dictionaries, as I can say. But I think glossaries still, even those companies don't define those glossaries. We do have, in the financial industry, we work with some of those products, data product companies who are actually trying to work kind of partnerships where they publish their glossaries into Collibra, and then we can map them into their dictionaries that we're going to harvest from those tools. But in other cases, we don't see that kind of initiative coming from product companies trying to publish their glossaries. But however, as I mentioned, we can automatically harvest the data dictionaries and provide that visibility to you.
A follow-up question that just came in is, what about apps like ServiceNow and OnePlan?
On our side, we do have ServiceNow, but I don't think OnePlan we have. I don't remember, but I can cross-check on it. But as long as it has APIs, you can even build a custom integration to get the metadata out of there. I think most of SaaS products these days have open API architecture, so should not be a problem for us to harvest them.
For more resources, I have attached the solution brief as a handout as well as the presentation deck. You can watch the video that kind of goes over the demonstration further. Feel free to join us at our community site or just reach out to us if you have any further questions. Thank you all so much for joining us and have a great rest of your day.